A great businesswoman in the midst of tears was convinced by a young man to accept a contract in an unbelievable way. David never had a typical childhood. From a very young age, his memories were marked by challenges and sacrifices that shaped his character. Born in a humble neighborhood of Chicago, he lived with his mother Emma and his younger sister Lily. The father, who was supposed to be the protective figure of the family, disappeared from their lives when David was only 6 years old. He vaguely remembered his face, but the pain of his absence was vivid and constant. Emma was a strong woman, but the daily adversities wore her down. She worked long hours as a cleaner in an office building, but the money was never enough. David, even as a child, felt the pressure to help support the family. Bills piled up, and many nights he saw his mother crying silently in the kitchen, trying to figure out how to pay the rent. It was then that David made a decision that would change his life. At just 8 years old, he began selling sweets on the streets. He used the cheapest ingredients his mother could buy and spent afternoons and weekends making the sweets with dedication. Early in the morning before school, he was there on busy corners, offering his treats to passers-by. David's shy smile and bright eyes captivated customers, and little by little, he managed to bring home some coins. The streets of Chicago were relentless. David faced the biting cold of winter and the stifling heat of summer, always with the same determination. He quickly learned that life was hard and that he needed to be even harder to protect his mother and sister. The difficult experiences matured him quickly, and he became a small adult long before his time. On the hardest nights, when the fatigue seemed unbearable, David found solace in the stories his mother told before bed. Stories about courage, hope, and resilience. It was in those moments that he allowed himself to dream. He dreamed of a future where his mother wouldn't have to work so hard and Lily could have all the opportunities he never had. These dreams kept him going, giving him the strength to continue. Despite all the difficulties, David never complained. He understood that his mother already carried too heavy a burden and didn't want to add more weight to her shoulders. Instead, he turned his pain into motivation. Every dollar earned, every thankful smile from a customer, was another step toward his goal of providing a better life for his family. School was his only refuge. Even tired, David dedicated himself to his studies with determination. He knew that education was his only way out. He was an exemplary student, always eager for knowledge and to learn something that could help his family out of poverty. The teachers admired his dedication and often wondered how such a young boy could be so responsible and determined. Between sweets sold and lessons studied, David grew up with unshakable resilience. His childhood was an arduous journey, full of obstacles that many boys his age would never know. But he also knew that these experiences were shaping him for something greater. He believed, deep in his heart, that one day he would be able to change not only his family's destiny, but also that of many others around him. David was used to the monotony of his days. School in the morning, candy sales in the afternoon, and homework at night. But one particular afternoon was about to change everything. It was a Friday and the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows on the streets of Chicago. David was at his usual corner trying to sell the last candies of the day when a distinguished man passed by, stopped, and came back. "What's your name, boy?" asked the man with a gentle smile. He wore an impeccable suit and had a welcoming look, different from the adults David was used to meeting. "David, sir," he replied, with a mix of curiosity and caution. The man introduced himself as Paul Harrison, a successful lawyer who worked in a nearby office. Paul bought some candies and stayed there, talking to David about his life, his dreams, and aspirations. Upon hearing David's story, Paul was impressed by the boy's determination and resilience. He saw something special in that bright-eyed boy full of hope. Paul offered to buy all the remaining candies, and, more than that, invited David to visit his office the next day. David accepted the invitation with enthusiasm, unaware that this meeting would change his life forever. The next day, David went to Paul's office. Upon entering, he was amazed by the grandeur of the place. Walls covered with books, luxurious furniture. Everything seemed to come from a completely different world from his own. Paul received him warmly and showed him around, explaining a bit about what he did as a lawyer. As Paul explained the intricate web of laws and justice, David listened attentively, fascinated. Paul's passion for the law was contagious. He talked about the importance of helping people, fighting for justice, and how a good lawyer could make a huge difference in someone's life. David felt something awaken inside him, a flame of inspiration he had never felt before. Paul noticed David's genuine interest and decided to invest in the boy's potential. He began mentoring him, teaching not only about laws, but also about ethics, hard work, and the importance of never giving up. They met regularly, and these sessions became the highlight of David's week. He devoured every book Paul lent him, every piece of advice he gave. Emma, David's mother, was deeply grateful to Paul. She saw her son flourish, find a new passion that motivated him even more. David now not only dreamed of a better future, he saw a clear path to achieve it. He knew the road would be long and full of challenges, but he was more determined than ever. Paul's words resonated in David's mind. You can be whatever you want, as long as you're willing to work hard and never give up. David carried those words with him every day, turning them into concrete actions. He began to study more diligently, dedicate himself more to work, and plan his future more clearly. Inspired by Paul, David began to stand out at school. He spent hours in the library studying not only regular subjects but also reading law books that Paul lent him. His grades improved drastically, and his teachers noticed the change. The boy who once sold candies on the streets was now seen as a brilliant and dedicated student with a promising future ahead. Paul also taught David the importance of helping others. He encouraged David to use his free time to tutor other students and get involved in community activities. David, who had always been a reserved boy, began to open up more, making new friends and building a support network. He realized that by helping others, he was strengthening himself. The relationship between Paul and David also brought hope and joy to Emma and Lily. Emma saw her son transformed, full of ambitions and dreams, something she always wanted for him but never knew how to provide. Lily, in turn, mirrored her brother and also began to dedicate herself more to her studies, wanting to follow in David's footsteps. In addition to academic and emotional support, Paul helped financially. He provided study materials, new clothes, and even helped with medical expenses when Emma fell ill. These actions further solidified the bond between the two families, and Paul became a constant and beloved presence in David's home. During the summers, Paul arranged for David to intern at his law office. These experiences were invaluable, providing David with a practical view of the legal world and the opportunity to learn directly from experienced professionals. He watched closely, absorbing every detail, every technique, every strategy. David began to see the law not just as a profession, but as a vocation, a way to make a difference in the world. Paul had shown him that lawyers had the power to fight for justice, protect the vulnerable, and correct injustices. This ideal deeply rooted itself in David, shaping his future aspirations. As the years passed, Paul's impact continued to manifest in David's life. He graduated from high school with honors and earned a scholarship for college, something he never imagined possible without Paul's guidance and support. In college, David continued to excel, always motivated by the memory and teachings of his mentor. With a scholarship in hand, David entered law school with immense enthusiasm, but soon realized that the reality would be much more challenging than he had imagined. The classes were intense, and the volume of reading was overwhelming. Moreover, university life required additional expenses that the scholarship didn't cover. Determined not to burden his mother, David decided he needed to find a job. David found a night job at a nearby diner. During the day, he attended classes, studied, and participated in academic activities. At night, he worked until dawn, serving customers and cleaning tables. The fatigue was constant, but he stayed focused on his goal. Every tip, Every dollar earned was a contribution to his education and a step closer to his dream. His days were long and exhausting. Often, he slept only a few hours before starting all over again. But instead of getting discouraged, these difficulties only reinforced his determination. He knew his family depended on his success and that his aspirations to become a lawyer were not just a personal dream, but a promise of a better future for everyone he loved. Emma and Lily, aware of David's sacrifices, did everything they could to support him. Emma, even with her fragile health, tried to lighten the domestic burden so David could focus on his studies. Lily, now a teenager, was inspired by her brother and equally dedicated herself to her studies, dreaming of following David's footsteps. Law school was not just an intellectual challenge but also an emotional one. David often felt isolated, as many of his classmates did not understand the difficulties of his double life. While they talked about vacations and leisure, David thought about bills to pay and his family responsibilities. However, he found support in a small group of friends who admired his work ethic and dedication. Paul remained a pillar of support. He regularly met with David, offering guidance and words of encouragement. He knew David's path was arduous, but he also knew that his protege had the strength and determination to overcome any obstacle. Paul always said, "Remember, David, the greatest sacrifices bring the greatest rewards." In the most difficult moments, when the fatigue seemed unbearable and doubts began to arise, David remembered his greater purpose. He saw himself not just as a law student but as a future lawyer who could fight for justice and help those in need. This vision drove him forward, even when everything seemed to conspire against him. Finally, after years of relentless work, sleepless nights, and unshakable determination, David graduated from law school. The graduation ceremony was a moment of triumph not only for him but for his entire family. Emma and Lily, proud and emotional, were there to see David achieve what seemed to be an impossible dream. David was ecstatic to get his first job as a lawyer at a renowned law firm in Chicago. It was the culmination of years of hard work and sacrifices. However, he soon discovered that entering the professional world brought new challenges. The reality of working in a large firm was very different from anything he had experienced until then. On the first day, David arrived early, eager to show his worth. The cold reception from some of the more experienced colleagues was a bucket of cold water. They saw him as the inexperienced rookie, someone who still needed to prove his worth. The competition was fierce, and many young lawyers were willing to do anything to stand out. The firm's routine was intense. There were piles of documents to review, tight deadlines to meet, and constant pressure to achieve results. David felt overwhelmed, trying to adapt to this frenetic pace. The endless meetings and overtime hours in the office began to weigh, but he knew he needed to persevere. One of David's biggest challenges was understanding the firm's internal dynamics. He quickly learned who were the allies and who he couldn't trust. The internal politics and power plays often left him confused and frustrated. But determined to fit in, he observed closely, trying to decipher the behavior of his colleagues and superiors. Despite the difficulties, David found some colleagues willing to help him. Erica, a senior lawyer with a generous heart, became his informal mentor. She saw David's potential and offered valuable guidance and advice. With her help, he began to better understand the company's culture and how to navigate the complexities of the work environment. David also faced the challenge of balancing professional life with his personal responsibilities. Emma and Lily still depended on him, and he made sure to visit them whenever he could. He spent sleepless nights working on complicated cases, but always found time for his family, remembering why he was fighting so hard. Over time, David began to find his rhythm. He developed a routine that allowed him to maximize his productivity while also taking care of his mental and physical health. The morning running sessions in the park became his refuge, a moment to clear his mind and prepare for the day's challenges. His efforts did not go unnoticed. Slowly, he began to gain the trust of the firm's partners. They saw in David a talented young lawyer willing to go beyond expectations. One of the smaller cases assigned to him became his opportunity to shine. With his dedication and attention to detail, he managed to solve the case brilliantly, earning praise from his superiors. David had begun to find his rhythm in the firm, but not everything was as he expected. Among the most important partners of the company, there was a current of skepticism and contempt directed at him. Despite his constant effort and the small successes he achieved, many of the partners saw David as an inexperienced rookie, a burden rather than an asset. David could feel the weight of the critical looks every time he entered a meeting room. Some partners didn't even bother to hide their opinions, exchanging sarcastic comments about the next generation that wasn't up to the challenges. David tried not to let it affect him, but the biting words and disdainful attitudes undermined his confidence. One of the most relentless critics was William Harrison, one of the oldest and most influential partners. William didn't believe that David, coming from a humble background and without the right connections, could really make a difference. "It takes more than dedication to survive here," he used to say, casting disdainful glances at David. These words echoed in David's mind, fueling his doubts and insecurities. David constantly worried about his future at the company. He knew that to have a solid career, he needed the approval and support of the partners. But how could he achieve this when most seemed determined to see him fail? The sleepless nights were no longer just because of the heavy work, but also because of the growing uncertainties and pressures. Moreover, David began to notice that the best cases and opportunities were always out of his reach. The more influential partners, like William, preferred to give these opportunities to more experienced lawyers or those with whom they had closer relationships. David found himself stuck in a cycle of minor and unchallenging tasks, with no real chance to prove his worth in high-profile cases. Even with Erica's guidance, who continued to support him, David felt his growth in the firm was stagnant. He began to doubt if he would ever break the invisible barrier that seemed to separate ordinary lawyers from the true players of the company. This constant worry began to affect his motivation and performance. Emma and Lily noticed the change in David. He was quieter and more worried than usual, and although he tried to hide it, his dark circles and tired expression spoke for themselves. Emma, in her maternal wisdom, tried to comfort him, reminding him of the difficulties he had already overcome. But David knew this was a different challenge, one that required more than resilience and hard work. The pressure began to reflect on his health. David, who had always been disciplined with his exercise routine, started skipping his morning runs and eating poorly. The constant stress began to take its toll, and he knew he needed to find a solution before everything fell apart. David was at a crossroads. He knew he couldn't continue in that state of anxiety and doubt for much longer. He needed to find a way to show his true potential, to prove to the partners and himself that he deserved to be there. But with each passing day, the doubt deepened. What more could he do to change the perception of those who had the power to decide his future? Amid the growing pressure and the disdain of the partners, David found a small spark of hope in an unexpected opportunity. During a routine meeting, he heard about a potential client who could bring a highly lucrative contract to the firm, Mrs. Evelyn Johnson. Evelyn was one of the most influential and respected businesswomen in Chicago, known for her empire of technology companies and her relentless approach to business. Mrs. Johnson was known for being demanding and difficult to please. Many veteran lawyers had tried to close deals with her unsuccessfully, but David saw this as a chance to prove his worth. He knew that if he could gain Evelyn's trust and secure the contract, he could change his position within the firm and finally earn the respect he so desired. Determined to seize this opportunity, David began his research on Evelyn Johnson and her companies. He spent nights reading about her career, her achievements, and most importantly, her business priorities and values. He knew he would need more than just legal knowledge to impress her. He needed to understand what really mattered to her. David discovered that Mrs. Johnson was a staunch advocate of innovation and corporate social responsibility. She valued partnerships that not only brought profit, but also had a positive impact on society. With this information in mind, David began to develop a strategy that highlighted how the firm could meet these expectations while also offering exceptional legal services. The first contact happened at a business conference where Evelyn was one of the main speakers. David knew this was his chance to introduce himself personally. He prepared meticulously, reviewing every detail he had learned about her, and preparing a speech that was to the point but also showed his passion and commitment. On the day of the conference, David positioned himself strategically to have a chance to speak with Evelyn after her speech. When he finally managed to approach her, his heart was pounding, but he remained calm. "Mrs. Johnson, I'm David Miller from Harrison & Co. I would like to discuss how we can support your innovation and social responsibility initiatives." Evelyn looked at him with cautious curiosity. She was used to being approached by many lawyers, but something in David's determination made her stop and listen. He spoke eloquently about his ideas and how the firm could provide legal support that genuinely added value to her. Her sincere approach seemed to impress her. "You seem to have done your homework, Mr. Miller," said Evelyn with a slight smile. "I'm interested in hearing more. Schedule a meeting with my assistant and we'll see where this can lead." David left the conference with a mix of relief and excitement. He knew he had secured a rare chance, but also that the hard work was just beginning. He spent the following weeks preparing a detailed proposal involving all the firm's resources to ensure they covered all of Evelyn Johnson's possible needs. When the day of the meeting arrived, David was ready. He presented his ideas with confidence and clarity, highlighting not only the financial benefits but also the alignment with Evelyn's values and goals. He made sure to show that he understood her vision and that the firm was prepared to support her fully. Evelyn listened attentively, asking incisive and challenging questions. David responded to each with precision and confidence, showing that he was completely prepared. When the meeting ended, Evelyn seemed satisfied, but did not give an immediate decision. "It was an impressive presentation, Mr. Miller. I need to discuss this with my board, but I'm inclined to move forward with you." David knew there was still a long way to go, but that first contact was a crucial step. He had planted the seed of trust and demonstrated that he had what it took to handle high-level clients. Now, it was all about his ability to follow through and turn that opportunity into real success. After the promising meeting with Mrs. Johnson, David continued to work tirelessly to ensure that the firm's proposal was irresistible. During this period, he spent long hours in the office, often working late into the night. On one of those nights, while reviewing some documents related to Evelyn's companies, David found something unexpected. Among the papers, there was a discreet reference to a substantial donation made by Evelyn to a medical foundation specializing in rare diseases. Curious, David decided to investigate further. A quick search revealed that the foundation specialized in treating a rare and severe disease. David began to suspect that the donation was not just an act of charity. Intrigued, he continued to follow the trail of information until he discovered that Evelyn's son, a 10-year-old boy named Max, suffered from a rare and debilitating condition. The news caught David by surprise. He knew that this discovery could be crucial to building a deeper connection with Evelyn, but he also felt an enormous weight of responsibility. David spent sleepless nights immersed in medical research and scientific articles, trying to understand Max's disease. He knew that it wasn't enough to just know the problem, he needed to find a solution. With each article read and each study reviewed, his admiration for Evelyn grew. He now understood how much she carried on her shoulders, not only as a powerful businesswoman, but as a mother desperate to save her son. The search for a solution was not easy. David faced a mountain of complex information, much of it difficult to understand without medical training. However, he was determined to find something that could make a difference. Every discovery seemed to open new questions and new challenges, but he kept moving forward, motivated by the desire to help Max and prove his worth to Evelyn. The lost hours of sleep began to take their toll. David found himself fighting against exhaustion, but every time he thought about giving up, He remembered Max's face, which he had never seen but imagined clearly. The idea of helping that boy to have a better life was what pushed him to continue. He knew that if he found a solution, he could change not only Max's fate, but also his own future at the firm. David finally found a ray of hope in a renowned clinic in California that was developing an innovative treatment for Max's condition. The treatment was expensive and still experimental, but showed promising results. Now, his task was to figure out how he could use this information to help Mrs. Johnson and, at the same time, show his capacity and dedication to the firm's partners. Finding the clinic was just the beginning. David knew he would need more than a simple mention of the treatment to convince Evelyn. He began to study all aspects of the treatment: the doctors involved, the preliminary results, and the possibilities of success. He needed to be prepared to answer all the questions Evelyn might have and show that the firm was not just interested in the contract, but genuinely committed to her well-being. Every step of this journey was a battle against time and fatigue, but David was determined. He knew this was his chance to do something significant, to show Evelyn that he was not just another lawyer seeking a big contract, but someone who cared and was willing to go the extra mile to help. With all the information gathered, David was ready for the crucial meeting with Evelyn Johnson. He knew that this meeting would not be just another contract negotiation, but an opportunity to change lives. On the morning of the meeting, he reviewed all the details one last time, adjusting the main points of his presentation. The weight of responsibility was palpable, but he was determined to make a difference. Evelyn arrived punctually at the office, her presence as imposing and confident as ever. David greeted her with a genuine smile and led her to the meeting room. After some initial formalities, he began to present the firm's proposal, highlighting the benefits and legal solutions they could offer. Evelyn listened attentively, but David could see that she was waiting for something more. It was the right moment. David took a deep breath and began to talk about Max. "Mrs. Johnson, during my research, I discovered something that I believe is of extreme importance to you and your family. I know your son Max is facing a difficult battle against a rare disease." Evelyn was surprised, her eyes reflecting a mix of concern and curiosity. "I also discovered a clinic in California that is developing an innovative treatment for this condition." The room fell silent. David could see the change in Evelyn's expression, from skepticism to cautious hope. "The treatment is expensive and still experimental, but it has shown promising results. I delved into the subject and believe we can help finance this treatment as part of our contract." Evelyn seemed stunned. "You mean the firm would be willing to finance Max's treatment?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. David nodded, explaining how the financial proposal would include a clause dedicated to covering all necessary medical expenses for Max's treatment. He emphasized that the firm did not see this just as a contractual obligation, but as a personal and moral commitment. Tears began to shine in Evelyn's eyes. She, who had always been a figure of strength and control, seemed to crumble before David. "You have no idea what this means to me and Max," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "I have fought so hard to find a solution, to give him a chance to live a normal life." David felt a lump in his throat but maintained his composure. "Mrs. Johnson, I understand your struggle, and I want you to know that we are here to support you and Max every step of the way. This is not just a contract for us, it is a partnership for your son's future." Evelyn stood up and walked to the window, trying to compose herself. After a few moments, she turned to David, her expression soft but determined. "You have done something that no other lawyer has managed to do. You have shown that you really care. This is more than a business contract for me. It is a matter of life and death." David felt immense relief and satisfaction. He knew he'd managed to touch Evelyn's heart and that this would make all the difference. "Thank you for trusting us, Mrs. Johnson. I promise we will do everything in our power to ensure Max receives the best possible treatment, sir." Evelyn approached David and, to his surprise, hugged him. "Thank you, David. You have not only given me hope, but also the certainty that there are still people who truly care. I can't wait to tell Max about this." The meeting concluded with the signing of the contract, but for David, it was much more than a simple legal agreement. He had achieved something extraordinary, not just for the firm, but for a family that desperately needed hope. As Evelyn left the office, David felt that a new phase of his career was beginning. He had proven his worth in a way that no one could ignore. The next morning, the Harrison and Kerber law office was abuzz with murmurs and curiosity. The news that David had secured a contract with Mrs. Evelyn Johnson spread quickly, but few knew the details. Most partners were incredulous, still not understanding how the young lawyer, so often underestimated, had managed to achieve something that so many others more experienced had failed to accomplish. A partners' meeting was called to discuss the contract. David, nervous but confident, entered the room with his folder of documents and renewed determination. William Harrison, the most critical partner, looked at him with evident skepticism. "So, Miller, it seems you got Mrs. Johnson's attention. I'm curious to hear how." David began his presentation detailing the strategy he had adopted. He explained how he had thoroughly studied Mrs. Johnson's needs and values, preparing a proposal that not only met commercial interests, but also aligned with her personal and philanthropic goals. As he spoke, the room began to quiet down, the partners leaning forward, interested. When he got to the part about financing Evelyn's son Max's treatment, David could see the expressions change. Some partners seemed surprised, others admired. "We included a clause in the contract that guarantees full funding for Max's treatment at a renowned clinic in California," David explained. "This approach not only solidifies our position as trusted partners, but also demonstrates our commitment to important social causes." William Harrison interrupted, his voice loaded with skepticism, but also curiosity. "Are you telling me you included a medical funding clause in the contract? That's unprecedented. What made you think this would work?" David took a deep breath before responding. "Mrs. Johnson is not just a businesswoman. She is a mother desperate to save her son. By offering this clause, we show that we truly care about what is important to her. We are not just lawyers. We are partners willing to go beyond to support our clients." The room was silent for a few moments as the partners absorbed David's explanation. Slowly, faces began to soften. Some whispers of approval were heard. Erica, who had always believed in David, smiled proudly. Even William, known for his rigidity, seemed impressed, though he tried to disguise it. "Well, it seems we underestimated you, Miller," said William, finally nodding. "This innovative approach can open new opportunities for the firm. Congratulations." David felt a wave of relief and satisfaction. He had proven his worth in an irrefutable way. But more than that, he had demonstrated that compassion and intelligent strategy could go hand in hand, bringing benefits not only to business but also to people's lives. After the meeting, several partners came personally to congratulate him. They now recognized not only his legal talent, but also his ability to innovate and create significant human connections. David knew there was still much to learn and achieve, but this moment marked a turning point in his career. As he packed his things to return to work, Erica approached. "You did a great job, David. I'm proud of you." David smiled, feeling deep gratitude for her constant support. At the end of the day, as he walked home, David reflected on how much he had changed since he started selling candies on the streets of Chicago. Every sacrifice, every sleepless night had been worth it. He had found his voice, his place, and, most importantly, had begun to make a difference. His mother, Emma, and his sister, Lily, were waiting for him at home. They knew something important had happened because David seemed lighter, happier. He shared the good news, and the small living room filled with laughter and emotional hugs. David, now a successful and respected lawyer in his firm, felt that he was finally starting to build the life he always dreamed of. But despite his professional achievements, there was an emptiness in his heart that he couldn't fill. It was then that, on a sunny autumn afternoon, Fate decided to intervene unexpectedly. He was at a charity event organized by the firm, one of those social occasions where lawyers are encouraged to network and show their philanthropic side. David, who always felt a bit out of place at these events, was about to leave when his eyes met those of a woman across the room. She was engaged in an animated conversation with a group of people, her laughter lighting up the room. Her beauty was undeniable, but it was the sparkle in her eyes that truly caught David's attention. Curious, he approached and introduced himself. "Hi, I'm David. You seem to be having a good time." She smiled, and David felt a pleasant warmth spread through his chest. "I'm Alice," she replied, with a mischievous glint in her eyes. "I'm a volunteer at the foundation and helping to organize this event. It's always good to see people committed to good causes." The conversation flowed naturally, and David soon discovered that Alice was a free-spirited person, passionate about helping others, with a charming sense of humor. She worked at an NGO that supported needy families, and her dedication to social work deeply impressed David. They talked about their lives, passions, and challenges, and David found himself captivated by Alice's sincerity and enthusiasm. The following days brought a series of casual encounters, each more charming than the last. David and Alice began to go out together, exploring hidden cafes and quiet parks in the city. Each meeting revealed new layers of their personalities and deepened their connection. David, who had always been reserved about his feelings, felt surprisingly at ease sharing his stories and dreams with Alice. Gradually, they became inseparable. Alice brought lightness to David's life, helping him balance the stressful work with moments of pure joy and carefreeness. They laughed together, explored new places, and supported each other in their respective journeys. Alice's passion for social work inspired David to get more involved in community projects, and he helped her navigate the complex regulations her NGO faced with his legal expertise. David and Alice's love continued to flourish, and each challenge overcome further strengthened their relationship. They learned to celebrate the small victories of daily life and support each other in times of uncertainty. David found in Alice not only a romantic partner, but also a loyal friend and confidant he could trust implicitly. David and Alice's life seemed to follow a path of unwavering happiness. Their careers were thriving, and their relationship grew stronger each day. It was a lot of micromousing to successfully seated in my report, and they shared dreams and faced challenges together, always hand in hand. However, fate had reserved a difficult test for this passionate couple. One morning, while preparing for another workday, Alice noticed a reddish spot on her skin. Initially, she thought it was just an allergy, but as days passed, other spots appeared, accompanied by a weakness that left her worried. David, always attentive and concerned, insisted that she see a doctor. After a series of tests, the news came as a devastating blow. Alice had been diagnosed with a rare and severe disease. The doctor explained that the condition was serious and that the treatment would be long and exhausting. The news left Alice in shock, and David felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. Their world seemed to crumble in an instant. The first days after the diagnosis were filled with fear and uncertainty. Alice, usually strong and optimistic, struggled to find a way to cope with the new reality. David, on the other hand, knew he needed to be the rock Alice could lean on. He promised himself that he would do everything in his power to help her overcome this disease. The treatments began immediately. The chemotherapy sessions were tiring and exhausting, leaving Alice weak and vulnerable. David was by her side every step of the way, holding her hand, offering words of comfort and keeping an encouraging smile, even when his heart was heavy with worry. He made sure to be present at every consultation, absorbing every detail of the conversations with the doctors, and incessantly researching the condition and possible treatments. David's routine changed drastically. Between working at the office and taking care of Alice, he had little time for himself. Nights were spent reviewing legal documents while also checking Alice's breathing as she slept. The physical and emotional exhaustion was overwhelming, but David never complained. He knew that his strength and determination were crucial for Alice's recovery. Despite the exhaustion, the disease brought out the true essence of the love they shared. Every small act of care became a powerful demonstration of love and devotion. Alice, even in her most difficult moments, felt comforted by David's constant gaze, which conveyed unshakable hope. The way he looked at her with tenderness and determination gave her strength to fight. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. The battle against Alice's disease was long and arduous, but David and Alice faced every step together. In the moments when Alice felt weakest, David found ways to bring a little joy to her day, whether with a simple walk in the garden or a funny story to distract her from the pain. It was on one of those afternoons, while walking in the park, that Alice confessed her fears and uncertainties to David. "David, I'm scared," she said, her voice trembling with vulnerability. "What if I can't beat this disease? What if all this is in vain?" David stopped and held Alice's hands firmly, looking into her eyes with an intensity that reflected all his love and dedication. "Alice, you are the strongest person I know. We will beat this together, one step at a time. And no matter what happens, I will be here with you. Always." These words, simple and sincere, renewed Alice's hope. She knew that regardless of what the future held, David would be by her side, facing each challenge with courage and love. This certainty helped her face the hardest days, each treatment session, each new battle. Slowly, the efforts began to bear fruit. The spots began to disappear, and tests showed signs of improvement. The journey was still far from over, but there was light at the end of the tunnel. David and Alice celebrated every small victory, each step towards recovery as if it were a miracle. Finally, after months of relentless struggle, the doctor brought the news everyone had been waiting for. Alice was in remission. The emotion of the moment was overwhelming. They hugged, crying with relief and gratitude. It was a shared victory, the result of unconditional love and mutual support that had sustained them both through the darkest moments. David and Alice had overcome together one of the biggest challenges of their lives. The fight against Alice's disease had further consolidated the love and partnership they shared. Now, with Alice recovered, the two returned to dreaming of the future and building plans for a life together. For David, an idea began to take shape in his mind, a deep desire to propose to Alice, formalizing the union that was already so strong and unbreakable. The idea of marriage was not just a reflection of the love he felt for Alice, but also an opportunity for David to face his own fears and traumas of the past. He remembered his difficult childhood, marked by the absence of his father, who abandoned the family when he was still a child. David had promised himself that he would be a different man, a present husband and father, who would never abandon those he loved. As he planned the proposal, David reflected on his journey and how his life had changed since meeting Alice. He wanted the proposal to be perfect, something that reflected all the love and gratitude he felt. He decided that the moment should be special and intimate, something that captured the essence of what they had built together. After weeks of careful preparation, he chose a small, secluded beach, a place they both loved, and where they could celebrate the simple and tranquil beauty of their love. It was a golden afternoon when David took Alice to the beach. They walked hand in hand, feeling the soft sand under their feet and the gentle sound of the waves in the background. Alice, unaware of what was to come, chatted excitedly about a new project at the NGO, while David, with his heart pounding, searched for the right words. When they reached a small nook surrounded by rocks, David stopped and looked into Alice's eyes, feeling a familiar and comforting warmth. "Alice," he began, his voice trembling slightly, "you are the person who has transformed my life in ways I could never have imagined. With you, I found a home, a place where I can be myself and share my dreams. I want to spend the rest of my life by your side, facing each challenge and celebrating every moment. Alice, with a curious smile and eyes shining with expectation, looked at David, holding his hands tenderly. "David, you are already everything to me. Each day with you is a new adventure and a new chance to be happy." With his heart beating strongly, David knelt in the sand, holding a small ring he had carefully chosen, symbolizing the simplicity and beauty of their love. "Alice, will you marry me and build a life together full of love and hope? I want to be the husband you deserve, and a present and loving father for our children." Alice, with tears of happiness in her eyes, knelt beside David, hugging him tightly. "Yes, David, 1,000 times yes. I can't imagine my life without you. You have shown me what true love is and the strength of a partnership. I want to spend every day of my life by your side, building a family and a future together." They embraced under the sky painted orange and pink by the sunset, feeling that this was the beginning of a new chapter, full of promises and shared dreams. For David, the marriage proposal was not just a commitment of love, but also a way to honor his promise to be a different man, someone who would always be present and who would never abandon his family. David and Alice's wedding was a celebration filled with joy, surrounded by friends and family who witnessed the deep love they shared. The ceremony took place in a lush garden with colorful flowers and the soft sound of a fountain in the background. The sparkle in Alice's eyes as she walked down the aisle reflected their happiness, and when David looked at her, he knew that this was the start of a new life together. The first years of marriage were marked by growing love and a complicity that strengthened with each challenge overcome. David continued to thrive in his legal career, gaining recognition for his ability to combine empathy and legal excellence. He stood out in complex cases where justice was not just a matter of law, but of touching lives and making a difference. David's dedication and commitment soon led him to take a prominent position in the firm. The partners, who once saw him as an inexperienced rookie, now respected him as a brilliant and innovative lawyer. He was often called to lead important projects and was invited to become a partner in the firm, an achievement that recognized his significant contribution over the years. However, David never lost sight of the reasons he started his journey: his family and the desire to be a present father. Alice, in turn, continued to impact lives through her work at the NGO. With David's help and support, she managed to expand the projects and reach more needy families. Their partnership extended beyond romantic love to a deep commitment to social and community causes. The decision to have children came as a natural progression of the love and stability they had built. When Alice became pregnant with their first child, David's joy was indescribable. He was about to fulfill a dream he had always carried with him: to be a present father, different from his own father, who abandoned him when he was just a boy. The birth of little Noah brought new light to David's life. Every moment with his son was a treasure. From the first words babbled to the first wobbly steps, David made sure to be present in all of Noah's important moments, carefully balancing his professional responsibilities with family life. He took Noah to the park, read him bedtime stories, and attended all parent meetings at school. Every smile and every laugh from Noah were reminders of the love he and Alice shared and the welcoming home they had created together. Over time, David and Alice's family grew. After Noah came little Emma, and sometime later, the youngest, Liam. Their house was always full of laughter and play, an atmosphere of love and happiness that David had always dreamed of providing for his children. David delighted in participating in their activities, from helping Noah build a rocket model to watching Emma's ballet classes and teaching Liam to ride a bike. The years passed quickly, and David found himself involved in a routine that combined high-level legal practice with vibrant family life. He had become the respected lawyer he always dreamed of being, but more importantly, he was the father and husband he always wanted to be. David felt a deep satisfaction in seeing his children grow up happy and secure, surrounded by the love and stability he and Alice had built with so much care and dedication. The values David and Alice imparted to their children were of compassion, integrity, and responsibility. They taught Noah, Emma, and Liam the importance of helping others and the need to fight for what is right, not just in words but through concrete actions. Each lesson was a reflection of David's journey, from a candy seller boy to a successful lawyer and loving father. The time David spent with his family was not just an escape from the pressures of work, but a return to what really mattered. He knew that professional success was important, but nothing could replace the feeling of holding Emma's hand as she faced her fear of a school play or the thrill of seeing Liam score his first goal in soccer. At night, as he put his children to bed, David reflected on the path he had traveled. He looked at Alice, who was by his side through every step, and felt a profound gratitude. The past, with its difficulties and challenges, had shaped the man he was today, but the present was a celebration of everything he'd achieved. A united family full of love and promises of an even brighter future. If you enjoyed David's beautiful story, subscribe to our channel and activate notifications so you don't miss any of the upcoming videos. If you love emotional chronicles and want to support our channel to continue bringing more quality content, consider contributing through Buy Me a Coffee. The link is in the first pinned comment. Your help is essential for us to keep improving. Thank you for your support. See you at the next Emotional Chronicle.